Welcome back to NoobHammer. Today we're going to go over three things. One, we're going to go over what you need to get started, the bare minimums. Two, how I recommend you go about getting those things. And then three, what we're going to actually use from those items and what we're going to throw out. I'm Rick, this is NoobHammer. Let's make some mistakes together. Alright, you know what? I lied, actually. I'm going to go into something else instead of exactly what you need to get started. I wanted to talk about what I have learned since the last episode. And my last episode was only my introduction, but I sent out this video to a whole lot of people and got their feedback back. And I've learned a couple of things. One, shut my damn blinds, because it was knocking the white balance off like crazy. Two, be a little more animated, less monotone, more like my actual self. I don't sit and talk to people like a robot all the time, so why would I do that in a video? I just want to thank everybody who was there for their feedback. I took it all to heart. I tried to buy some more lights so you have me more in focus on screen. I went ahead and closed the blinds. I went ahead and changed my mic position so that it's more intimate, and that's what this is all about. NoobHammer is all about learning, and it's not always about Warhammer, but sometimes it's Warhammer adjacent. Alright, the first thing after you've decided you want to dive into this wonderful world of Warhammer that you're going to need is the rules. You can get those in two ways. Actually, we'll go over multiple other ways you can actually get them too, but the first way is there's a free battle primer on the Games Workshop website, and I'll include the link in the description below. The second way is you can go ahead and dive all in, and you can actually go out and buy the real rulebook, as I have, because I'm a sucker. The next thing you're going to need is, of course, a table. This can be your kitchen table, it could be a garage fold-out table, whatever you have available. Honestly, it can be a large area on the floor that you don't mind sitting cross-legged in and playing. The next thing you're going to need is some terrain, and that terrain can be anything. It could be coffee cups, it could be pens, it can be books, it can be styrofoam shipping, inserts, whatever you need to go ahead and signify that there is a variance in terrain on this battlefield. If you want to get super fancy, you can buy the actual terrain from any of your local gaming shops, or you can 3D print them like I did, because I'm a sucker. As an aside, I do want to point out that when you go online on YouTube or wherever and you're looking at these awesome battle reports and you have people with these massive armies, they're all beautifully painted on battle matted tables in a fantastic studio, and they have wonderful terrain, I don't want you to get discouraged. They probably didn't start that way, and you're probably not either. I know I'm not, and I'm still super interested in learning more about Warhammer 40k. I've got great news for those of you who haven't bought anything. Games Workshop just recently released 3 different starting sets, boxes full of 2 armies, multiple models. And they come in 3 tiers. There's the recruit tier, the elite tier, and the command tier. As you go up in tiers, you go up in what you get, the amount of models, the amount of terrain, the type of terrain, whatever, but you also go up in price. I'm going to break those down for you right now. These getting starter sets all come with some of the same basic stuff. So first of all, I should probably point out they're all Necrons versus Space Marines, and it's not one specific Space Marine chapter, and it's not one specific Necron dynasty. That's up to you to decide. But they, if you were thinking about playing another army, like if you wanted to play Tyranids or you wanted to play Tau, these are not going to have models for you. But if you're on the fence and you're not sure what army you want to play yet, these are a great way to get started. They all come with some of the same basic equipment. They're all going to have dice. They're all going to have rulers for ranging and moving your models. They're all going to have the basic rule set. Some have the full rule book, but I'll explain all that later. And then they're all going to have some kind of battle mat and terrain. And just as you go up in the tiers, they get fancier. The first tier of the getting started sets is the recruit tier. And what that's going to get you is 20 models, all that stuff I mentioned previously, the rules, the dice, the rulers, everything, for a measly $50. And if you have a friend who's also interested in 40k, and you guys want to combine your money and split it up, for $25 each, you guys can go down to your local game store, buy what you want, buy this box. You'll have everything you need to get started. If, however, you have a little more cheddar and you don't mind spending it to get started into a hobby, you can move up to the Elite box, and that comes with 27 total models, including some of the harder to find stuff that aren't available in most other boxes, like the Space Marine Outriders, which are motorcycle Space Marines, and then the Necron Scorpex Destroyers. This set costs $100, so if you and your friend want to go spend $50 each, you get some of the harder to find models, you get a larger army, you still get all the data sheets and the rules and the rulers and the dice and everything. This is the tier that I think is the best deal. The creme de la creme version is the Command Edition, and what you get is you get all the same models and data sheets as you got in the Elite Edition, but what you get is you get a little fancier battle mat, you get a little fancier plastic instead of cardboard terrain, and you get the entire rulebook. You don't get any battle primer style rule books. If you have the $165 and you want to spend on this, go ahead, please do so. You're probably gonna have to go ahead and buy that rule book eventually anyways, so that'll save you $65 in the long run, but you definitely do not need this tier to get started and just see if you're interested in Warhammer. These new sets are an incredible way to get started in this hobby now. You get absolutely everything that you need to play. You get it right out of the box. And if you decide to stick with it, all those models are still good for the armies that you're going to build in the future, assuming you want Necrons or Space Marines, of course. Quite honestly, if these sets had been available 6-8 months ago when I got started, when I started learning about Warhammer, I would have jumped on this bandwagon. Alright, you got your rules, you got your friend, you got your table, you got some terrain, maybe not, and you're ready to play. Well, what do you need next? Well, you need a data sheet. If you bought one of those getting started sets, it'll come with all of the data sheets that you needed. If you haven't bought your getting started set, you'll need to go out and purchase the codex for the army that you play. I play Grey Knights, Grey Knights represent. But if you're like me and you pulled out one of these things and you saw icons and acronyms that you're not familiar with, don't fret, we're gonna go through all of that right now. The first thing I want you to look at when you're looking at this data sheet is I want you to pay particular attention to the power level at the top right corner. Now what that does is it gives you a general idea of whether two units in an army are of equal power to one another. Now there are contradictions and caveats to that, but then what you do is you take all of your power levels for all of your units in your army, you add them together, and then you get a power level, so it might be 25 or 30, and you then compare that to your friend's army who hopefully matched you at 25 or 30, and then you know that at least in a general sense those armies are now balanced against one another. Another term you're going to hear used a lot online on Reddit or YouTube videos are points, and those will be point values from various units versus other units, and a general tournament level game is going to be 2,000 points, which more or less lines up to about 100 power level. Now here's the thing. In the future, it is going to be very important for us to understand the point system and what that all means and how that works as it relates to open and match play. But for the moment, I want us to focus on power level, not points, and just playing against our friends in narrative and fun games. Beer and pretzel games, if you will. When you're just getting started, if you have one of the getting started boxes, as long as you are fighting the two armies contained within it, they will have an equal power level and it will be fine, and you don't need to do all this math and worry about it. If, however, you have an old army sitting on a shelf, or a friend brings theirs over because they've been playing before you have and they're trying to get you involved, you will need to do the calculation for power level based on the latest data sets for those units. I recommend for people starting out that you go anywhere from 25 to 30 power level. Now on this data sheet specifically is for the Eradicator squad, which it says in bright letters at the top of the data sheet. Then it'll tell you the number, the name. To the right of all of that is a whole bunch of attributes that we'll go over in a bit. Below that is their weapons types, what all of their attributes are, and then below that are abilities, including special abilities that that unit can do that no other ones can, and then the faction keywords and the regular keywords. And again, we're going to go over all of this right now, so don't fret. Continuing on into this data sheet for the Eradicator squad, you'll see it's a total of 3 models for this unit, 2 Eradicators and 1 Eradicator Sergeant. Then you have M, which is their movement speed, 5 inches. WS is their weapon skill or their melee skill. BS is their ballistic skill or their shooting skill. S is their strength. T is their toughness. W is their wounds, which think of that like hit points from any role-playing game you've ever played in your life. A is attacks, which is their number of melee attacks per model. LD is their leadership, so you can see that the sergeant has a slightly better leadership. And then SV is their armor save. Quick note, anytime you see this nomenclature of the like a 3 and then a plus sign, that is called a 3 up. If it's a 4 and a plus sign, it's called a 4 up, so on and so forth. And that strictly states that on a roll on a d6 of 3 or higher, that this unit would hit in either shooting, because that's their BS skill, or melee, because that's their weapon skill. The next line on the data sheet lets us know what their standard loadout is. So for these Eradicators, all 3 of them are going to have a bolt pistol and a melter rifle each. Then, under that, are the attributes for those weapons in particular, including the name, the range, the type. S is strength, AP is armor penetration, D is the amount of damage that it does, and then abilities is any special abilities that those weapons do. So for instance, this melter rifle has a range of 24. Its type is assault 1. 1 is the amount of attacks that you get with it when you decide to use it. Its strength is 8, which is pretty high. AP is -4, which is also very high. And then its damage is D6. And when you see that nomenclature, D6, you roll 1d6, and that is the amount of damage that this weapon will do. So this weapon is able to do anywhere from 1 to 6 damage. Then you see that its ability says, when resolving an attack against a unit that is within half range, roll 2d6 when inflicting damage with it, and discard 1 of the results. So you would roll 2d6 and take the highest one, probably. There are several types of weapon in this game, and I'm not going to get into all the specifics here right now. The rules can tell you more if you have questions. But just so that we're reading this data sheet all the way through, I will talk about pistol and assault. Assault means that they can still fire this weapon even after they have moved and advanced during the movement phase, which I'll get into later, although they do suffer a -1 to hit penalty if they do that. Then pistol means that this weapon can still be fired during the shooting phase into a unit in which is within engagement range of this unit. And I'll get into that more as well later. But my point has more to do with the fact that there are many different types of weapons in this game, like grenade, heavy, blast, rapid fire, and all of those will change the way that a unit plays, and will also change the way that you play against that unit. Under the abilities portion of the datasheet, you see that they have the ability Angels of Death, and then it lets you know where to find information about what that means. And then this unit also has the Total Obliteration ability, which it explains in detail right here on the datasheet. Under that is the final part of the datasheet, which includes the faction keywords and the keywords. Now, faction keywords obviously have to do with that faction. So these are an Imperium unit. They are Adeptus Astartes, which is a fancy way of saying Space Marines. And then they have in these brackets chapter. And what that means is that when you are playing this Eradicator squad, say in the Salamander chapter, you would replace that chapter keyword in those parentheses with Salamanders. Then under keywords, you can see that it's infantry. It has the Mark 10 Graphis armor. It is Primaris, and it is an Eradicator squad. This is important because certain abilities and functions of different units and models within the game only affect certain keywords. So for instance, and this is going way far in the future, if you have a stratagem that only affects your infantry units, casting it on a vehicle instead of an infantry unit would be a complete waste of a stratagem. Alright, that was a lot, right? That's insane. That's way too much. But it is, unfortunately, in a game this complex, the bare minimum of what you have to understand about your units so that you can effectively field them on the tabletop against your friends. So, hope that was alright. I hope you learned a lot. And now, I'm going to keep rambling on as we move into what I am going to throw out in the rules that you've just downloaded or bought versus what I'm going to recommend you keep to learn. So this is what I recommend that you throw out in the rule set to start. We're going to toss out the command phase. We're going to toss out the psychic phase, unless you're playing Grey Knights or Thousand Sons, in which case those are such a cornerstone of those armies, I recommend you keep it. We're going to toss out command points, stratagems, unit coherency. For now, we're just going to move our units around in big blobs, and that'll be enough. And we're going to ignore most of the terrain rules except obscuring. I just said a lot. I realized that. And I said a lot that I think a lot of experienced players are gonna pull their hair out about and wonder why I'm not teaching it. For me, when I was first learning, I had an experienced player sit me down and run me through just the basics. The things you're going to do hundreds of times per game that you play this. You're going to be shooting, you're going to be moving, you're going to be charging, and you're going to be fighting. Learning those things are more important when you're starting out than it is to know whether or not you have enough CP to use this stratagem at this time to counter your other opponent's stratagem. All of that is very fascinating and awesome and complex, and one of the reasons why I'm interested in learning more about this game. But I don't think new players need to worry so much about those kinds of things. So what does that actually leave us? Well, in generalities, it's going to leave you deploying a unit onto the field of battle, moving it around, and then shooting or stabbing the absolute shit out of your friend while you enjoy a beverage of your choice. In more technical game terms, what that actually leaves us is the deployment, the movement phase, the shooting phase, the charging phase, the fighting phase, and morale. That's still going to be a lot to learn, believe me. For the experienced players that are rolling their eyes right now, this guide isn't for you. For the new players who are confused and just want to jump in and see what the game is like, this is for you. If, however, you're a new player who just loves the complexity and wants to dive right in, please do. This guide probably also isn't for you, but I hope that you still find something valuable from my channel. Alright, that was a lot. I know, a lot of sitting here, a lot of listening to me, and a lot of staring into my deep baby greens. But what's next? What's the next video going to be on? Well, I'm going to talk to you about the movement phase and the shooting phase. I'm going to talk to you about the basics and how to get comfortable with those two phases. In the meantime, I'm Rick. This is NoobHammer. Please like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz, but also call your mother. Okay, I lied a little bit. I'm actually not going to jump into exactly what you need to get started. First, I want to take a moment and talk about why do I pop my knuckles? Why do that? If you've gotten that far, but you need data sheets. And a data sheet is all of the listed attributes for a particular unit within an army. So that's gonna in the meantime, I'm Rick. This is NoobHammer. NoobHammer?